Hey everybody. So today's activity, when I can find the instructions, here we go. We're making a huge timeline explaining the history of the Earth. So we've learned last week about continental drift and how the continents over time have changed positions and they've moved around, and that's affected how life on Earth has evolved. So now we're going to look at the whole history of the Earth, and we're going to look at the geology and the continents and compare that to important events that happened in evolution. Because we know that the way the continents and the geology of the Earth, all the events that have happened, they've affected how life has evolved too. So it's good to compare them both. So firstly, you're going to be downloading the instruction sheet here. Then, so the overview I've basically said, you're making a big timeline. You'll print it out if you have a printer on 3 A4 pieces of paper and stick them all in one long line into a timeline. And then by the end of the activity, you'll have a giant timeline that you can stick on the wall or you can stick into your book as a fold out to refer to later. So by the end of it, you should be able to explain what the geologic timescale is and list the main eons and some of the other main periods in the timescale, and describe at least 10 of the main events in the history of the Earth. Some of the geological events and some of the events in evolution of life. So the introduction, you can read all this yourself, but the Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago when the solar system was first forming. It started off as a cloud of gas and dust called a nebula, and eventually the sun formed, and its gravity caused the gas and dust to start spinning around, and it formed the planets. So 4.5 billion years ago is the start of our story on Earth, and that's where our time scale starts. So scientists use this timeline, which is called the geologic timescale, to measure and record the history of the Earth. So biologists use it, geologists use it, and any other scientists studying earth sciences too. So I've split this time scale up into 3, and that's the sheet you'll be downloading, not that one. So your instructions are, you need to download the printout, which has the timeline on it, print it out, stick them together. If you don't have a printer, just get 3 pieces of A4 paper and rule a line along the middle and copy the rough dates of the time scale and write the major eras on your timeline as well. Then download all the extra resources, because a lot of this activity is reading comprehension and finding information from certain sources. Then download this worksheet, which you already have, and print it out, because on the next page there's some key events. All these ones here, and these are the events that you'll be sticking onto your timeline when you've researched them in the right place. So you'll need to find the date, approximately, of when each of these events happened. There's events in the geology of the Earth, and then really important events in evolution of life, in the green ones. Okay, so when you've done all the downloading and printing, now you're ready to actually annotate your timeline. So, like I said, each one of those key events you'll need to research just to figure out what really happened. A lot of them are self-explanatory as well. So you can use the extra resources documents. There is one that has all the mass extinctions on it, and there's another one that has maps of the Earth showing how the continents moved at each period. This is showing millions of years ago. So it starts at 650 million years ago in the late Proterozoic period, all the way up to 14 million years ago, which is getting closer and closer to today. You can also use page 76 in your workbook. That has some good maps showing where the continents have been in the past. And lastly, you can use the internet, and there's a great page on Wikipedia here. I know you're not encouraged to use Wikipedia, but for science, it's really accurate. So I'm happy to use if you use this History of the Earth page. That has pretty much all the other information on it. So you research one of the events, you find out when it happened, and then you stick it onto the timeline in the right place. So if we find the timeline, here's what they'll look like. Let's do an example. If you are doing, when does multicellular life first evolve? Well, using the web page just before, I found out, and I know that multicellular life evolved right at the beginning of the Paleozoic era. So we'll zoom in. And that's pretty much the start of the Paleozoic era. So I would be sticking down here in the evolutionary events, I'd be sticking multicellular life first evolves down here, and I'll draw a line up there, and I'll write 540 million years ago that event happened. The next thing to do is, under each event, like I said, write the approximate time it happened and write one sentence that explains the event. So in our example, multicellular life, I would write on our timeline that life evolved to be made of more than one cell. One simple sentence explaining that event. Okay, the last thing when you've researched all the events is and you've stuck them on and described them, then you need to write a summary paragraph that explains this topic. So use the timescale to describe the history of life on Earth and compare how geological events have affected evolution. Because you might notice there are some key things that happen at the same time, like one event caused the other one. Okay, this will probably take more than one period. So if you don't finish it in today's double, that's fine. We will continue working on it later in the week too. Okay, post all your questions on Teams, and good luck.